The story of Clara and Daniel is the kind of tale that, when told, seems like something out of a fairy tale, but it falls apart to become a nightmare. Clara Mendoza, a 28-year-old woman, worked passionately as a nurse in a small hospital in the city. She was known for her dedication and empathy towards her patients, who always spoke of her warmth and commitment. Of average height, 1.65 meters, Clara had a slender figure that complemented her radiant smile. Her light brown hair fell in soft waves that framed her face, while her green eyes conveyed a depth that captivated those who crossed her path. On her wedding day, Clara looked spectacular in a white lace dress, simple but elegant. The sleeves were made of lace and the back had an open design that highlighted her figure. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, adorned with a small tiara, and in her hand she carried a bouquet of white roses that symbolized purity and eternal love. She was the portrait of the perfect bride. On the other hand, we had Daniel Torres, the man who became her husband. At 32 years old, Daniel was a tall and robust man, reaching 1.85 meters. His presence was imposing and he often attracted glances wherever he went. With straight black hair, he maintained a well-groomed beard that gave him a certain sophistication. He dressed elegantly. On his wedding day he opted for a dark suit, white shirt and black tie, a combination that highlighted his bearing as a true gentleman. However, behind that image of success and charm, dark secrets were hidden that would soon come to light. Clara and Daniel met at a mutual friends party on March 14, 2022, a day Clara would remember forever. It was a warm spring night, surrounded by soft lights and the cheerful sound of music. The party was being held on the terrace of an apartment in the city center, a place filled with laughter and a festive atmosphere. That night, Clara was especially happy, laughing and enjoying the company of her friends. It was in the midst of one of those fun moments that Daniel came over. Clara was discussing the importance of mental health in her work when she noticed a tall man with an intense gaze watching her. Daniel introduced himself with a natural confidence and a charming air. "I can't help it. I must know who the brilliant nurse is who talks about such important things," he told her, smiling. From that moment on, the spark between them was undeniable. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their jobs, their dreams, and their passions. Daniel shared his love for business and his aspiration to do something great in life, while Clara was inspired by his enthusiasm and determination. During that first night, under a starry sky, they exchanged their first kiss, a delicate connection that marked the beginning of an intense relationship. Over time, their relationship solidified. The first few weeks were magical, filled with romantic dates and unforgettable moments. Daniel took her to fancy dinners, while Clara showed him her world at the hospital, taking him to participate in community events. However, as time went on, Clara began to notice certain disturbing behaviors in Daniel. Despite his charisma, there were times when he became evasive regarding his work commitments. After almost a year of dating, Daniel proposed to Clara in December 2022. He did so during a candlelit dinner at an Italian restaurant where they had had their first date. Clara, touched by the gesture, accepted without hesitation. The wedding took place in June 2023 and included friends and family in a joyful ceremony. As their honeymoon approached, Clara was excited about the future that awaited them. Originally, they had planned a trip to the beautiful beaches of Cancun, but Daniel, always in search of luxurious experiences, suggested a change of plans to a dream resort in the Bahamas. "I want this honeymoon to be perfect, a place where we can relax and celebrate our love," Daniel told her, filling Clara with excitement. His confidence made him seem like an ideal husband, and Clara didn't question the decision. In the weeks leading up to their honeymoon, Clara continued her work at the hospital, where she strove to provide the best care for her patients. At the same time, Daniel kept himself busy with business that required him to travel frequently. Although Clara felt that there was something strange about his attitude, her love for him did not allow her to question the nature of his work. The summer days passed with laughter and plans, and Clara could not help but imagine a bright future with Daniel. One anecdote Clara treasured was their getaway to the mountains the month before her wedding. During a hike, she tripped on a rock and fell. Instead of worrying, Daniel just laughed and gently helped her up. "It's just a sign that I need to be more attentive," Clara joked. This experience made her realize how supporting each other was essential in their relationship. However, an echo of unease resonated in Clara's mind. Despite the perfect facade, something didn't quite fit. On July 5, 2023, the day of their honeymoon finally arrived. Clara excitedly packed summer dresses, bright swimsuits, and suntan lotion, looking forward to enjoying every moment on the beach. Daniel, on the other hand, selected elegant outfits and luxurious accessories, including an expensive watch he had recently acquired. Clara looked at him in amazement, wondering where he had gotten that money from, but decided not to question it. "This is just the beginning of our life together," he told her with a smile, promising a future full of promise. Throughout their time together, Clara and Daniel shared moments worth remembering. One of them was the day they attended an outdoor music festival. It was an event filled with artists and delicious food. Daniel, ever the gentleman, bought Clara a flower bracelet, which he lovingly wore throughout the day. That afternoon, as they danced and laughed, just as the sun was setting, Clara felt like everything in her life was perfect. However, in the midst of the fun, there were also moments when Daniel's shadow began to loom. Another memorable occasion was a trip to an amusement park. Daniel, boasting of his bravery, challenged Clara to ride the scariest roller coaster there. Clara, somewhat nervous, decided to accept him, and together they screamed as they went up and down at terrifying speeds. That day, Daniel played the role of her hero, making sure that Clara was always safe. "Don't worry, I'll always be here to protect you," he told her as he hugged her after the ride. With these intimate memories in their hearts, the couple embarked on their trip to the Bahamas, eager to enjoy what was supposed to be a week filled with love, experiencing new adventures, and creating lasting memories. However, as the trip progressed, the atmosphere would begin to change, and the secrets that Daniel had hidden in the dark would begin to surface, leading to an unimaginable tragedy. As Clara and Daniel enjoyed their honeymoon in the Bahamas, she had no idea that behind the facade of a loving husband, Daniel was deeply involved in a web of illicit activities that put not only his life at risk, but Daniel's as well. He presented himself to Clara as a successful businessman, full of dreams and ambitions, but the reality was very different. The first sign that something was wrong came days before her wedding, though Clara tried hard to ignore the alarm bells ringing in her mind. One night, after a romantic dinner, Clara decided to use Daniel's phone to search for a map app. Opening the device, she found a text message containing information about a shady deal involving unregistered goods. Uneasiness washed over her, but Daniel, noticing her confused expression, assured her that it was just work matters. The company policy could be difficult to understand, and quickly steered the conversation toward a lighter topic, the future they wanted to build together. Over the months, several incidents had begun to unsettle her. She had heard rumors about police raids at the couple's home. Friends and acquaintances mentioned that the police had been conducting raids nearby, capturing people involved in an illegal trade in valuable items. Clara felt the tension growing every time the sirens rang out in the night. However, she always chose to trust Daniel. She told herself that her husband was an ambitious businessman and that the accusations could not be directed at him. After all, he was the love of her life. Daniel had delved into shady dealings shortly after beginning his relationship with Clara. At first, it all seemed harmless. Small deals involving electronics. He posed as a legitimate merchant, but his ambition quickly spiraled out of control. During the year before his wedding, he became involved with a group of smugglers who offered him a chance to make quick money. Daniel, dazzled by the idea of becoming rich in a short time, ended up trapped in a world he never imagined would be so dangerous. This group was involved in the trafficking of stolen goods, illegal sale of products, and distribution of prohibited items. Daniel only wanted to make money and power, but to do so he had to engage in activities that quickly crossed the fine line between legitimate commerce and crime. While they were a relevant part of his life, his connections with these criminals began to affect his relationship with Clara. Their encounters became less frequent, and upon returning home, Daniel often arrived with an air of nervousness that Clara could not ignore. His days were filled with calls to contacts, meetings with people of dubious reputation, and the constant fear of being discovered by the police. Over time, the police began to close in on them. There were unexpected visits to their apartment, which created an atmosphere of fear and mistrust. On several occasions, Clara found herself faced with police officers asking about Daniel, moments that left a cold pit in her stomach. He always had a quick explanation. They are just routine questions. They were already on their honeymoon, and Clara only thought about the shadows that were beginning to loom over their happiness. As the days passed, Daniel seemed more and more unreachable. Clara noticed that sometimes he would distance himself, taking calls or receiving text messages that he seemed to hide. With a mixture of anxiety and insecurity, she decided to trust her instinct, remembering the moments they had shared and the love she felt for him. Daniel's involvement in the illicit business had begun as a way to make quick money, a temptation that had trapped him in a web of debt and threats. Meetings with his partners took place in discreet places, away from prying eyes. Clara had always believed the story he had told her about his work, assuming that his long hours were simply part of his success in the business world. However, Daniel's facade of confidence and charisma hid a shady world that Clara never imagined. Days after their arrival in the Bahamas, while Clara was enjoying a cocktail on the beach, Daniel received a call from one of his business partners. He retreated to a secluded spot, speaking in whispers, his expression tense. Clara couldn't help but feel as if a dark cloud was hanging over her perfect honeymoon. Upon returning, she noticed that his smile was forced. However, even with those warning signs, Clara was willing to leave everything behind and enjoy her new married life. Clara and Daniel's life together hadn't always been easy. Although everything seemed perfect at first, they were no strangers to trouble. There had been times when the police had shown up at their home because of Daniel's activities. A couple of times, Clara had answered the door, surprised to see the officers. On one of those occasions, they asked her if she knew a man who had been in the neighborhood, a former associate of Daniel's who had been involved in a drug scandal. "No, I don't know him," Clara had replied, trying to hide the worry in her voice. The officers nodded, but uneasiness had grown in her heart. That meeting left a strange feeling of unease inside her, but she decided to downplay it, thinking that Daniel would never do anything that could jeopardize their relationship. Every time the police showed up, Daniel was forced to reassure her. "It's just a misunderstanding, honey. I'm on the right track." Clara wanted to believe him. She wished it was true. The loving words Daniel offered her always seemed to dissolve her doubts, and she sank into the illusion that everything was fine. As their honeymoon approached, Daniel began receiving warnings from his associates. The police were more vigilant about his movements, and amidst those warnings, the pressure was mounting. The dangers of his business began to seep into their relationship in ways Clara could not foresee. However, Clara's love for Daniel made her blind to the reality unfolding around her. Every time he promised her that everything was going to be okay, she felt safe, as if she were in a dream from which she did not want to wake up. When they did have time together, Clara tried to make each moment special, cooking his favorite dishes or organizing fun activities, but it always seemed like Daniel's thoughts kept him away. She saw the tension on his face, but every time she asked about his emotional state, he would divert the conversation, and his response was always an "everything's okay," honey that felt more and more fake. One day, while they were walking along the beach, Clara decided to talk to Daniel. "Are you okay, love? I've seen you very pensive lately," she asked him, concern reflected in her voice. He smiled, but the shyness in his eyes was evident. "It's just work, you know how it is. But I'm here with you, that's what matters, right?" Clara tried to convince herself that that answer was enough, but the anxiety she felt wouldn't go away. Finally, the long-awaited trip to the Bahamas was coming to a climax. For the first few days, the resort was shining brightly between clear blue skies and turquoise seas, and Clara felt like she was in a dream. They shared dinners on terraces overlooking the sea, danced under the stars, and Daniel smiled at Clara as if everything was perfect. However, the shadows were never far away. In their hotel room, as they prepared to go out to dinner one night, Clara found the courage to ask Daniel about the things that were bothering her. "Daniel, what were those calls about those days? It scares me to think that there might be something more behind what you're telling me." It was a tense moment. Clara wanted to be honest, but she feared the answer. Daniel turned around, his expression turning grim. "It's just work matters, Clara. You don't have to worry. I promise you this is just a phase." Clara felt a pang of uncertainty, but in her heart, she knew he loved her. The party continued, and with each passing day, Clara felt an urge to try and uncover the truth, but her love kept her from that line. As their honeymoon drew to a close, Clara decided she had to trust her instincts. One night, as they strolled along the beach under a full moon, Clara stopped and looked into Daniel's eyes, searching for an answer. "Daniel, I think I've seen too much. I can't ignore what's going on any longer. I know there's something behind all of this. I can't be complicit in your silence," she said, trembling as she spoke the words. Her eyes reflected anguish and a need for truth. Daniel, visibly upset, reacted angrily. "How can you say that? Don't you trust me?" Clara felt hurt, but her heart still hoped for the best. However, fear began to nest inside her. "It's not about the lack of trust, but about worry. I love you, and that scares me. If there's something else, please tell me." It was then that the atmosphere changed. Clara, full of courage, stepped forward. "You know I will always be here to support you, but I need the truth," she insisted. The tension was palpable, and a mixture of love and desperation hung in the air. Finally, Daniel succumbed to the pressure. "What you want to know, Clara, is that I have been involved in businesses that are not legal. I have been trying to get out of this, but it is difficult for me now. This is bigger than us." Clara felt as if the ground was slipping away from beneath her feet, the pain of his words passing through her like a bolt of lightning. Daniel came over and gave her a hug to comfort her, but the horror was beginning to consume her. Clara, in tears and anguish, realized that she could not allow this situation to ruin her life. Daniel, sensing her reaction, took her to the hotel room. "It doesn't matter. Everything will be fine. Trust me," she repeated. But the obstacle they had created was too great. Things came to a head that very night. After hours of arguing, raw emotions and anguish intertwined with love, Clara realized she needed to make a decision. There was a one-way street in their relationship, marked by Daniel's choices. As the waves crashed against the shore in the bedroom, Clara screamed, "I don't want to be with someone who hides things from me. I want security and love." Daniel, in his desperation, began to lose control. "No one can find out. No one can know what I did," he screamed as a shadow of madness flashed in his eyes. Desperate for Clara to leave him, he confronted her violently. In a moment of rage, the balance was broken. Hurtful words turned into brutal actions. In a fit of rage, wanting to control the situation so that nothing would be known about his dark dealings, Daniel hit Clara, bringing her to a critical point of violence that culminated in the unimaginable. After the violent confrontation, Clara was paralyzed, shock invading every part of her being. Unable to comprehend what had just happened, she sat on the floor of the room, tears streaming down her cheeks. The revelation that Daniel was involved in criminal activities culminated in a mix of panic and sadness. Daniel, seeing her reaction, tried to calm the situation, but desperation had taken over. When he tried to approach her, Clara stepped back, full of fear. He, in a moment of rage and desperation, raised his hand again, hitting her hard. At that instant, horror broke loose. As the blows fell, Clara could bear no more. That moment of violence became her last fight. Once Daniel's fury faded, he realized what he had done. In horror and regret, he reached out to her, but it was too late. Clara lay motionless on the ground. Her dreams, her love, and her future vanished in a single instant. The tragedy was devastating. The life that once shone with love was suddenly extinguished. The echo of her screams resounded in the empty room, but in the darkness there was no one who could help her. Daniel, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, ran away from the place, leaving behind the scene of a crime he would never have wanted to commit. The man who had promised to take care of her became her executioner. A few days later, the police, investigating the situation, found Clara's body. The autopsy report revealed the brutality of the beatings and their tragic outcome. The news shocked her family and friends, leaving them with deep pain. The promises of a future together became a fleeting memory, drowned out by trauma and loss. For his part, Daniel soon felt the weight of his actions. When the police tracked him down, not only would he face trial for murder, but he would also bear the weight of what he had lost. The love of Clara, who had believed in him until the very end. The life he had built on lies and crimes crumbled, leaving only an irreplaceable void. Meanwhile, Clara's family came together in strength after her tragic loss. They turned their grief into action, creating a foundation in her memory that helped victims of domestic violence, providing support, resources, and hope. Although Clara was gone, her spirit and legacy lived on through the help they offered to those who, like her, needed a way out. The court has sentenced Daniel to 20 years in prison, allowing for a possible appeal after serving a period of the sentence. This decision reflects the complexity of the case and the devastating impact it has had on Clara's life, as well as her family. Clara's absence has left a deep void in her home, where her laughter and joy used to resonate, and her family is now faced with unimaginable grief. This void not only affects her closest loved ones, but also resonates in the community that knew her, constantly reminded of the tragedy that has marked their lives.